Well, we just watched the Atlanta Falcons eke by the Dallas Cowboys 19-13. That means there's only one game left in Week 9. That would be tomorrow night's Philadelphia-New Orleans game. I guess technically that's tonight, but we'll call it tomorrow night. Anyway, Atlanta improves to 8-0, the only undefeated team left in the league. Very, very impressed with that Atlanta offense tonight. How could you not be? Dallas came into this game top 5 in the league in total defense, top 5 in pass defense, and Atlanta just shredded them. Matt Ryan throwing for over 340 yards, Michael Turner rushing for 100 yards, both Julio Jones and Roddy White over 100 yards receiving. So very, very impressive performance of that Atlanta offense, even though they only scored 19 points. They squandered some opportunities. Matt Bryant, their field goal kicker, missed a couple of field goals, but it was good enough to get the win. Leaves you with serious questions about the Dallas Cowboys. They're now 3-5. They're in the tough NFC. The NFC, those wild cards are going to be very competitive in the NFC this year. I do not see Dallas catching the New York Giants for the lead in the NFC East. But, maybe I'm speaking too soon. We are only at the midpoint of the season. Dallas still with 8 games left. But, boy, it looked like same old Cowboys. They moved the ball. Tony Romo threw for over 300 yards. And even though there were no turnover problems tonight, they were not able to make the crucial, critical plays on offense. Only 3 of 10 on third down. And we mentioned their defense let down after playing well all year. So Dallas falls to 3-5. Atlanta improves to 8-0. Hope your day was good. My day, so-so. 2-2 on my 4 picks. Now, we're doing the money line thing on the site now also. We're calling it the Great Money Line Experiment. I'm betting $100 on every game money line, picking every game money line. So 12 games today was 8-4 money line on those games. $1,200 out, $1,407 in. I'm no math major, but I think that's a $207 profit. So actually lost a little bit on the other way of doing it, picking our favorite games spread on the handicap spread and picking them. Had 4 of those games, broke even at 2-2, but lost on the juice there. Now we are backing New Orleans tomorrow night, so we'll see if we can be profitable. Also betting New Orleans on the money line. Now I'm betting 100 to win 69 on the money line. It might sound overly simplistic. You think, what do you mean, just betting games on the money line, betting games to win? Well, normally I would never make a bet on a team money line if they were minus 500 or minus 550 like the Packers or the Bills today. It's just not worth it. You wouldn't think risking $100 to win 20 or $1,000 to win 200. But those teams win so much of the time that I've been thinking about it over the last couple of weeks, and I thought, now, it seems like when you just pick winners, you always pick more winners than losers. And if you hit on a couple of underdogs, anyway, it's just an experiment we're going to do for the second half of the year, see which way I do better, picking my favorite games on the handicap line, the spread, or picking all games money line. And even though it's an extremely small sample size today, we did do better on the money line today. Now, enough about me and my day. Let's talk about some of these football games today. There were a lot of good ones. I want to go through a few of them. Start with one of the games I lost. I did lose backing the Dolphins and the Browns, one backing the Packers and the Tampa Bay Bucks, and again, I do have New Orleans tomorrow night. But one of the games I lost, the Miami-Indianapolis game, a little bit of a tough loss. Miami sort of controlled the game, had the lead for most of the game. In the end, they could not hold down Andrew Luck, Indianapolis' rookie quarterback. 433 yards today. That sets a new record for an NFL rookie. The history of the NFL, a rookie has never thrown for that many yards. Now, that record was set last year by Cam Newton, so it didn't last long. It is a new NFL. I'm sure Andrew Luck's record will be broken within the next few years. I don't care, though. A rookie passing for 433 yards in the NFL. Extremely impressive. No interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Watching that game, we had the sound off. We were in here live streaming as we do every Sunday. Had all 8 games on at once. So I didn't realize that Andrew Luck was breaking any sort of records. Had no idea what his statistics were. Didn't know till after we finished the live stream and got off the air that he had set a new NFL record for rookie passing yards. As a matter of fact, I told a friend of mine, I said, Luck, there were receivers running open all game in the Miami secondary. And he said, it's that record. He set that record. So that's how I found out. And it doesn't surprise me. He was throwing for a lot of yards. The Miami offense moved the ball very well in that game too. Now, this was a showdown of 2 4-3 teams. It was a crucial game. 881 combined yards of offense in the game. Both offenses moving it up and down the field. Indianapolis coming out with a 23-20 win. 5-3, the Indianapolis Colts. Who'da thunk it? This team was 2-14 last year. Again, picked number 1 in the draft. That's how they got Luck after all. Now, you might have seen, if you haven't seen yet, you probably will see, because it's a sort of a viral video right now. Chuck Pagano, the Indianapolis coach who was diagnosed with leukemia early in the year, an emotional post-game speech to his team. If you haven't seen that yet, I urge you to check it out. You can tell, or you would think, that they're really going to play for him. I know they've already, adopted the Chuck Strong phrase there in Indianapolis, and already a lot of money has been raised for cancer research in the name of Chuck Pagano, but do believe that's going to continue. We're pulling for Chuck Pagano. Certainly a touching scene in the Indianapolis locker room after the game. Tough not to pull for the Colts this season after seeing something like that. Now, I was not rooting for them today. Very frustrating outcome of that game. As I said, they did cost me some money. But that's okay. Sometimes you're reminded, as I was reminded in watching that post-game speech with Chuck Pagano, there are more important things in life than a little football game or winning or losing a bet. And, you can tell Chuck Pagano with what he's going through right now is really feeling that. So, again, thoughts and prayers go out to Chuck Pagano. On to some more football games. The Denver Broncos, we're in the middle of the season now. This was week 9, so it's really about the time where contenders start asserting themselves. I mean, the first half of the NFL season is always a big muddled muck. There's so much parity in the league. Seems like through 6 or 7 weeks, every single team just about is within about 2 games of each other in the standings. But right about now is when we start to see some real separation. Contenders emerge. We see who the real teams are. One of those definite contenders that has emerged is the Denver Broncos. Now, even though Denver's just 5-3, now same record as Indianapolis Colts. By the way, with all the good things I just said about the Colts and the Dolphins, was impressed with their offense, by the way, I did come away from that Indianapolis-Miami game today thinking that neither one of those teams are serious contenders. The Denver Broncos are a different story. Denver went on the road today against Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati was only 3-4 coming into the game, but the Bengals were coming off a bye. This was a good team last year, a playoff team. A dangerous feeling spot for the Denver Broncos. As we said coming into the game, if Denver was a true contender, this was a game they would win, because Cincinnati, not a great team, but felt like a very dangerous game. Denver has been somewhat inconsistent, at least early in the year. Very impressed with Denver today. Got off to an early lead, fell behind in that game. Cincinnati came all the way back. Denver ended up pulling it out in the end. Peyton Manning, 291 yards, 3 touchdowns, overcame a couple of interceptions. Again, Denver moves to 5-3, clearly in the driver's seat in the AFC West. I do not see any AFC West team catching the Broncos over the last 5 games. I mean, Denver's won 4 out of the last 5 games, and in 4 out of the last 5 games, they've scored 31 or more points. Their offense is absolutely starting to click, and they're looking like one of the best teams in the AFC. Maybe I'm late to the party. I know a lot of people have been saying this about Denver all year, and I haven't been quite sold. Was not sold on this team through 5 or 6 weeks, but I'm becoming a believer. Absolutely. Was very impressed with Denver pulling out a road win today in Cincinnati. Peyton Manning starting to look like himself. I mean, he's starting to look like in his prime Peyton Manning. Like we said, 290 passing yards, 3 touchdowns again today. Another team that I think asserted themselves, maybe not as a contender on the level of Denver, and they're not an AFC team. They're in a different conference anyway, but I think definitely maybe made a statement that they're better than they have been the last couple of years, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle got off to a great start to this season, but like we've talked about during the week on the side a little bit, you looked at Seattle heading into this game with Minnesota this week. They were 4-4, 31st in the league in total offense in terms of yards per game, 31st in the league in passing yards. Tough not to see this Seattle team as the same team they were last year. Excellent defense, even though Russell Wilson's done a nice job. Again, they were 31st in the league in passing yards coming into the game. You can't sugarcoat that. They just don't pass for as many yards as other teams, so they don't score as many points as other teams, don't gain as much yardage as other teams. They do have an excellent defense, excellent running game, but they had those things last year. They had those things the year before last. They had a good defense. They had a good running game. They did not have adequate quarterback play. Tavares Jackson, their quarterback. Now, they tried to adjust that situation this offseason, signing Matt Flynn, drafting Russell Wilson. Wilson has been their quarterback. Seattle with a very impressive win today over the Minnesota Vikings. Both these teams were surprises early in the year, and I think Seattle showed today with this win. They put up 30 points against the Vikings, and even though Wilson did not throw for big yards, a nice, clean game, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 173 yards passing, badly outplayed his counterpart. Minnesota is in trouble now. Minnesota started off the season strong. I mean, Minnesota is still 5-3 even after their loss today. Oh, excuse me, Minnesota's 5-4. They were 5-3 heading into the game today. But I believe Minnesota's in trouble because Christian Ponder is really starting to slip. Christian Ponder started off this season on a good note. No turnovers through the first 4 games. Turnovers were his problem last year. They were his problem throughout his collegiate career. Today, Christian Ponder had a terrible game. 11 for 22, only 63 yards passing. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Adrian Peterson was a beast, 182 yards. Marshawn Lynch rushed for 124. The running backs put on a show. At halftime of that game, Seattle's defense really stepped up, clamped down. Minnesota only 3 second-half points. And I think we saw today in Seattle, and I know the Seahawks are a much better team at home than on the road, but I think we saw, even though Wilson did not throw for a whole lot of yards, had a very clean, I thought, impressive game, badly outplayed Christian Ponder, was clearly the best quarterback on the field. I think we saw that Seattle is officially better than they were over the last couple of seasons, and I do think Seattle is going to be a legitimate contender in the NFC. I like their chances more than Minnesota. Obviously, I'm not going out on any great limb saying that after Seattle beat Minnesota today, and both teams now have the same record, but signs of unrest maybe on that Vikings team after the game. Percy Harvin, their star wide receiver, speaking out against his quarterback, maybe against his offensive coordinator. Don't know how you want to interpret his comments, but Percy Harvin said, I quote, "We're kind of one-dimensional right now. We just have to dial up some better pass plays." So, hey, that's Christian Ponder throwing for 63 yards today, and that's the best wide receiver on the team, telling the media with cameras in front, or with microphones in front of him and cameras in his face, we're one-dimensional. We're a running team. We need to dial up some better pass plays. So dial up, the phrase dial up, that might mean that's a little bit of a shot at the offensive coordinator. Maybe if he would have said we need to execute better, that would have been more of a shot at Ponder. Who knows? But anytime some of your best players start going public to the media with things like this, not a good sign. And again, I did not like what I saw out of Christian Ponder today with Percy Harvin's post-game comments. You have to guess. And the Vikings were one of my teams. 2 weeks ago, we published an article on the site, gave you a couple of teams to back and a couple of teams to fade, a couple of teams to stay away from. We've got a couple of those teams right so far. The Vikings were on our teams to fade list. We thought that was a great sell high point for the Vikings when they were 5-2. Indeed, that has been the case. Tampa Bay, one of our teams, we had you buy when they were low. Now, they haven't all worked out because Indianapolis was another sell team. Had them, thought they were at a high point over the last couple of weeks, and they've just gotten better. They've covered the last couple of weeks. So again, we're not always right. God knows we're always right. Wrong just as much as we're right, aren't we? But did have this Minnesota team right. Did feel that it was time to sell a couple of weeks ago, and I still think it's a good idea to sell the Minnesota Vikings based on what we're starting to see out of their quarterback, out of their passing game, out of the quarterback position. Another game between two contenders, one team that we knew was a contender and is still a contender, and the other team who we thought a couple of weeks ago was maybe no longer a contender, but they've showed over the last couple of weeks, and they put a final statement on it today. The Pittsburgh Steelers once again are for real. They went on the road, took on the New York Giants, who had been playing some great football. The Giants were 6-2. Pittsburgh pulled out an impressive come-from-behind win, ended up winning that game 24-20. The Pittsburgh defense, so impressive. And the defense really was a part of this Pittsburgh team that we had big questions about, going all the way back to 4 or 5 weeks ago when they were shredded by the Oakland Raiders in a road loss. And then more recently, that defense was not impressive in a primetime loss to the Tennessee Titans. And at that point, a lot of people, myself included, jumped off of the Pittsburgh bandwagon. Because going into that Tennessee game, they were 2-2. They needed the game. It's not like they should be suffering from any lack of motivation or anything like that. Tennessee was a bad team. And to see the Steelers in a primetime scenario in an important game not be able to come through against a bad team shook a lot of people's belief in the team. But if the last couple of wins hasn't got your belief back, I think today's win against the New York Giants, this improves Pittsburgh to 5-3. And even though they're still in second place in the AFC North, because Baltimore was able to pull out a win today over Cleveland, I still think the arrow is pointing down with the Baltimore Ravens with all the injuries they're dealing with. And so I like Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's a good bet right now. I think they have an excellent shot at winning the AFC North. Again, couldn't be more impressed with their defense today. The New York Giants, in their last 11 games, heading into today, in their last 11 games against teams with a winning record, they were 9-1-1 against the spread. I mean, the Giants had, every time they faced a winning team recently, not only have they beaten those teams, they've covered against those teams, and it's been because of that offense. Eli Manning in that passing game totally shut down today. Eli 10 for 24, 125 yards, no touchdowns, and interception. I mean, the Giants only had 182 total yards of offense. That is unbelievable. If you've seen them play a couple of times this year, in a couple of these games. I mean, Eli, remember, against the Tampa Bay Bucks several weeks ago, threw for over 500 yards. 182 total yards today is all the New York Giants could muster against Pittsburgh. Still, not a big deal for the Giants there. A bigger win for Pittsburgh than it is a big loss for the Giants. Giants at 6-3. They're in the driver's seat in the NFC East. And it's surprised we're saying this because the NFC East, their reputation is, what a good division. And even coming into the year, early in the year with a tough NFC East. NFC East is now one of the weakest divisions in football. I mean, you look at it, it just is. The Giants are a good team, no doubt about it. They're going to win that division going away. Look at the rest of the division. The Redskins are a bad team. They fell to 3-6 after losing to the Carolina Panthers today. The Cowboys, they're certainly not a good team. We've seen them. They are what they are. They stumble around. Sure, they have pieces and can make a play here and there, but not a good team. And the Eagles are going straight down the tubes, which brings me to this Monday night game. Tomorrow, or I guess tonight, last game of Week 9. I'll be putting up a preview of that game on the site here in a few hours. I am on New Orleans tonight. I recognize the Saints have the worst defense in the league. As a matter of fact, worse by a wide margin. They're giving up 50 yards more per game than any other defense in the league. So, the Eagles are going to be able to do some things on offense, but the Eagles are a sinking ship. I believe this team has imploded. I believe, I know they're calling players-only meetings this week. I believe they're all past the time for that. And I've been a believer in the Eagles. I backed them last week stupidly against the undefeated Atlanta Falcons. Thought that, after the bye week, after firing Juan Castillo, obviously Andy Reid's intent in firing Juan Castillo was improving the defense, and it went the other way. That defense played their worst game of the year last week, and I don't care, all the motivation and the rah-rah speeches, the defense I saw last week going on the road to the Superdome to face the New Orleans Saints offense, no. They don't stand a chance. Do not stand a chance. I don't care what the Philadelphia offense does against this New Orleans defense. The Philadelphia defense won't even be a speed bump for this Saints offense. So I do like the Saints. Now, 3 markets being offered on BETDAQ in this game right now. Philadelphia is seeing some love. Saints opened as 3.5-point favorites on BETDAQ. Since then, a New Orleans -3 and New Orleans -2.5 market have both been put out there. Philadelphia also seeing some love out in Vegas, so I guess not everybody is out on the Eagles as I am. I am out on this team. I believe they've quit playing hard for Andy Reid. It is a matter of time before he is fired. We'll see if they prove me wrong. I mean, I'll be watching this game with an open mind, but I will have a rooting interest because I am backing the New Orleans Saints, and I've got them at 3.5. I got in on the bad price here. It's too late. I've already made my bet. If you want to join me at 3.5, New Orleans -3.5 can be had at 232 on BETDAQ right now. I know they can be had at 2.5, and 2.5 sounds nicer than 3.5, but 232 sounds pretty nice, especially considering, I think the Saints might run away with this thing late in the ball game. We shall see, and again, we'll have a preview of that game up on the site here in a few hours. Until then, I'm John Arnette for BETDAQ NFL.